As artists, we've been working with scientists for over 10 years, and it's really interesting because normally when we enter a scientific setting, that we're the ones that are maybe looking at things in a little bit more of an off-topic way.
It was really surprising when we were resident at the Biodesign Institute. The scientists were taking lots of unexpected topics.
It's a place where there's a lot of fluidity and a lot of connectivity between different research areas, especially moving between Carlo and Athena's lab was really seamless.
My name is Carlo Maley. I work on cancer. I'm a cancer researcher, but I do it from the perspective of evolution. So I'm interested in all the ways that evolution impact cancer. Then we're also interested in how nature has found solutions to preventing cancer. And then can we translate that into doing better cancer prevention in humans? We work at the Biodesign Institute, and the whole mandate of that institute is to learn from nature.
And so many questions that we have in science come from nature and trying to understand nature. Now, if we look at a lot of the great evolutionary biologists in history, they were naturalists. And Darwin, for example, he spent lots and lots of time just being completely immersed in nature, and that led him to ask certain questions and see connections that he would not otherwise have seen. In my lab, what we try to do is understand cooperation and conflict by looking across many different systems. We're taking evolutionary biology from two perspectives. So one is looking inside an organism at how the cells evolve and how that leads to cancer. So you have this evolutionary dynamic inside the body happening during the lifetime of an individual where cancer cells are growing and expanding. But you have another evolutionary dynamic that's happening on a totally different scale. Organisms that are better at suppressing cancer will do better at reproducing and surviving than organisms that are not good at suppressing cancer.
The desert is a place that apparently is without life. Actually, there is a lot of life in the desert. It's a very specialized one. Maybe you don't expect to find comb jellies and sponges in the desert. That is a different point. But just to increase the variability of the desert population, we decided to pick some of these species, right? And we are using this organism for a completely different reason, to study cancer. And that is even more unusual than to study aquatic organisms in the desert.
He kind of brought out a petri dish and put this thing under the microscope and let us see this bizarre creature.
So this is how we met Angelo, because he was working in both labs, in both Carlo's and Athena's lab. He showed us the placozoa, this tiny organism. Instantly, we knew that we wanted to work with Angelo.
And the thing that struck us straight away was we could see the cells that were the mechanics of the disease and the body that they were affecting in the same frame at the same time. And that was really, really moving.
So if these animals, they are not happy, they are not growing properly in the lab, you cannot use for do experiments. You need to love these animals, because otherwise you cannot learn anything from these animals. Each of these animals, sometimes, I think they has a special story. The first animal that I really start to work is the placozoa. The one that we have in the lab were collected accidentally in the 1969. They were studying algae, and they found together the algae this weird animal. A few years ago, we received, I think, 5 placozoa, and then we started to grow thousands or more of these animals. It's difficult to study this animal in the wild, and the reason is easy to understand, because In average, they are 2-3 millimeters in diameter. So it's not easy even to see these animals. But they have this capacity of dividing and dividing multiple times. If you give enough time, they can reach size of I don't know, an elephant in terms of number of cells, right? So there is the chance that definitely they can develop cancer. So the fact that the cancer was not detected in these animals maybe is not just a lack of study, it's probably because they have really something that is different. Our question it was why these animals they are not developing cancer, and they have something that we don't know.
He's really thinking about how do we create in the lab an environment that is conducive to the growth of these organisms like they would be growing in their natural environments. And so, for example, with the placozoa that we have in the lab, Angelo literally brought special rocks. And this isn't just like a, aesthetic thing like, these rocks will make them feel comfortable because it's like home. These rocks actually, they have all sorts of microorganisms and probably minerals and all sorts of things. We don't necessarily understand exactly all of the things that these rocks are bringing, but with those rocks there, the placozoa survive a lot better than without them.
There's still a lot of mysteries around the placozoa and a lot of unknowns as well. And it was these unknowns that we were really inspired by.
It's really kind of fascinating to consider all those creatures that have yet to be discovered that might have really, really interesting mechanics or processes that are really valuable to science and really valuable to human health.
So we're creating a new organism, a fictional organism that has the mechanics of cancer programmed into its cells.
It's really kind of a story about the importance of balance. The chemozoa are organisms that maintain their health through maintaining the balance of their cells. So the same ideas that affect our health at the level of the cell kind of relate quite closely to how our behavior as an individual affects broader ideas of health, especially in an environmental context.